Hello and welcome. I'm Professor Patti, and I'm reading from our assigned textbook, which is written by Mark S. Homan, Promoting Community Change, Making It Happen in the Real World. So this is intended to be a supplement to actually reading the textbook, using the resources as recommended in the course, deepening your knowledge during or after one of my grad school courses or through the course of social work supervision with me. So I do teach and train social workers and other human services professionals, but I supervise people in the state of Ohio pursuing independent licensure and people elsewhere just who want to know about mental health services for children and families. I like to say kids 0 to 99, community organizing, grant writing, board work, street outreach, just any number of things that I've done over the course of my 25-year career. So welcome today, and we're starting on page 6, chapter 1. When the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in 2005 examined the health and well-being of children, it found that social and economic factors have a noticeable effect on children's health. Not only are the children directly affected, but the physical and mental health of children can affect the family as a whole. There's a nice little statistic in there that you could cite. That's a national survey here. Low-income children are more likely to be in poorer health and are twice as likely to have socioeconomic difficulties. They are more likely to live in neighborhoods that do not feel safe or supportive, and they miss more days of school. Moreover, the physical and emotional health of a child's mother affects how she can care for her children, and it has an impact on the health and well-being of the entire family. So we definitely want to look at this research study and say, did they look at parents? Did they only look at mothers? Was their sample from a single mother's program from Health and Human Services? I'm very interested to know why we're not talking about fathers or parents in this sample. And that should be listed in the limitation of the study. So if you looked up, which is cited in the textbook, this study, you can answer any of those questions that you might have. Furthermore, higher levels of parenting aggravation are more likely in lower income families. I definitely want to know what the Department of Health and Human Services lists as a parenting aggravation. I want to know what those factors are. And I want to know what the presence is of the factors in the community I'm serving. Because chances are, not always, but many social work initiatives and policy are looking at ameliorating equity and specifically restoring equitable access to lower income factors or to lower income families. So we already have such a great study that we could cite for so many of your community projects. The report notes that these circumstances may combine to put children in low-income families at a health, developmental, and educational disadvantage. Page 5. At the end of 2013, almost 11 million workers were out of a job, with more than 4 million long-term unemployed individuals. People of color were particularly affected. The unemployment rate for Hispanic workers was 1.5 times that of white workers. Black workers fared even worse with an unemployment rate twice that of white workers. I'm going to say bingo and say that they're going to list that American Indians have the worst statistics because generally it's like a multiple of every other ethnic group. All right. Bureau of Labor Statistics 2013. They don't even mention it. Psych. Okay. A father's involuntary job loss increases the likelihood that children will repeat a grade or be suspended or expelled from school. Khalil and, this is hyphenated, Zeal Guest, 2008. With parental job loss, middle-class children are less likely to obtain any post-secondary education. And the effect for Black children is 4 times as strong. Khalil and Whiteman, 2009. Boy, do I want to know Khalil. K-A-L-I-L, because it looks like Khalil is doing research in the 2000s and forward on issues that will directly impact a lot of the things that you might be interested in. The questions you may have about your community. One event can set in motion a host of other long-term consequences. This is at a time when the stock market grew faster than it had in 15 years and set an all-time high Vlastelica 2013. This at a time when after-tax corporate profits were at an all-time high. Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis 2013, Hungerford 2013, U.S. Department of Commerce 2013. If you apply for a federal grant, and I want to tell you this from personal experience, they have the most amazing resources. They have the most wonderful policy analysts. If you are someone who, like me, will develop a program and will read the manual and will ask for a copy of the grant, and then you structure your services directly, specifically to deal with those outcomes and to speak to those outcomes that we're trying to get, you will find policy support all over the place on federal grants. So these are phenomenal places to look. U.S. Department of Agriculture, Federal Reserve Bank has data, has national data sets that you can compare to your local samples. Really important stuff in here. Do you find this exciting? I find this so exciting. All right. What's it like to be hungry? After completing more than 52,000 in-person interviews and reviewing responses to more than 31,000 questionnaires from member agencies, researchers for Second Harvest, now called Feeding America, the nation's largest organization of emergency food providers, discovered these compelling facts. 42% of clients choose between paying for food, utilities, or heating fuel. 35% must decide between paying for food or rent or a mortgage. And 32% face, what do they face? A choice between paying for food or medicine or a medical care. So you can pay for food and medicine or medical care. Cohen, Kims, and Oles, 2006. These are daily decisions that many Americans know nothing about. But this is not news to more than 50 million Americans, including more than 17 million children who, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, suffered from food insecurity during 2011. Coleman, Jensen, Nord, Andrews, and Carlson, 2012. Food insecurity means that they were at times unable to acquire adequate food for one or more household members because they had insufficient money and other resources for food. Page 5. Almost 37% of households with children headed by a single woman were food insecure in 2011. More attention is being directed to hunger among older persons as well. In 2011, more than 3.5 million households with an elderly person living alone or with others were food insecure. Coleman, Jensen et al., 2012. More than 2.3 million adults were locked behind bars in 2013, up from 500,000 in 1980. So 500,000 in 1980 to 2.3 million adults. So that's a factor of more than 4 over the course of 33 years. And by 2010, the price tag to the states had quadrupled to over $50 billion. Pew Charitable Trust 2010, also a phenomenal source of research. They call it the Pew Trust. It's like the church pews you're sitting in. Pew Charitable Trust. You want to look up how to access that data set. If you have not already, we have a social work librarian, and ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, you are paying their salary. So please, your social work research librarian would love to have a one-on-one session with you and talk with you about how to access the data sets that you need. And you can save them and use them for research and grants and policy and introduction letters for your whole career. So please use this invaluable resource. Okay, moving on. The Pew study reported that 54% of these inmates were parents of minor children. And 2.7 million children had a parent behind bars, up from 1 in 125 just 25 years ago. If you are somebody who has already identified that you're really interested in working on criminal justice reform and looking at carceral citizenship, Pew Charitable Trust, the U.S., like the Bureau of Justice Associates, BJA, there are so many organizations that are funding family reconnection projects for people who are soon to be leaving prison. So that's a phenomenal place for policy work and to work just as a grant writer, advocate, or organizer in your community. There's great resources out there, folks. All right. Children with incarcerated fathers are about 6 times as likely to be expelled or suspended from school. These children live in homes whose income has significantly dropped and will likely continue to experience much lower income after the parent is released. Pew Charitable Trust, 2010. What other effects might this have? About 200 children with disabilities may be unnecessarily growing up in Florida nursing homes. And can we think about this? As community workers, if you've been in the community, I can already think of a few situations that might lead to children with disabilities living in nursing homes. Can't you? All right. An additional 3,000 children with disabilities are at risk of being sent to adult nursing homes because the state slashed services that would have kept them at home with their families. Florida. Kennedy, 2013. Perez, 2012. Sound good to you? Mark S. Homan, let's chat. Let's chat about these paragraphs. All right. The widespread use of antibiotics in cattle and poultry, not just to treat disease, but to promote faster animal growth, also promotes another kind of growth, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. This has become a huge public health concern, leading to reduced effectiveness in treating diseases in humans and increased hospital costs. That is something that we can target in our funding, is how do we reduce a bottom line financial cost that this social problem is causing society, and how can we use funding more creatively to target the people who use the highest amount of services. And we have that evident in our Homeless Collaborative and HPRP, which is the HUD funded federal fund that's locally administered for homeless shelters, emergency shelter grants, project-based housing. All of those things are administered by HUD. And the National Collaborative and in Cleveland are really good at our local county collaborative to end homelessness on prioritizing people who are costing the most bottom line. And that's where we can free up big dollars, because people who cost the most money, we can spend a lot more money than on a typical client, because the average stay in a homeless shelter, the most frequently occurring number is 1. So we don't want to spend all the money on people who spend 1 night in a shelter. We want to spend very expensive money on people who spend 5 years in a shelter, because those people are super expensive. So looking at what the cost is feels icky to social workers. As community organizers, we need to understand our community budgets, our state budgets, our federal budgets, and understand how to use these funds equitably. Because I'll tell you what, I've never, ever met a person who worked for a funder who didn't deeply want to see dollars getting to the correct people. So if you can figure out how to write a grant and how to target people, I promise you, the most cutthroat for-profit funders are so happy about it, and they love to see their money working effectively on what they want it to work on. Blazing ahead. Policies. Okay, so this has become a huge public health concern, leading to reduced effectiveness in treating diseases in humans and increased hospital costs. Policies that would hold industrial farm animal producers accountable for hazardous environmental pollution and other practices that endanger the public's health have been systematically blocked. If you want a research article about what's actually happening, Kim et al., 2013, and that's KIM, folks. All right, according to the National Research Council of 2013, the climate is changing as fast as any warming trend in the last 65 years and is likely to continue for the next 30 to 80 years. Things are changing so quickly that some species just cannot adapt fast enough. They will be lost forever. Does this get you a little hot under the collar? Mark, you have no idea. Are all these conditions acceptable to you? Call me. We'll discuss it. Of course, many people in other parts of the world struggle even more. The World Bank 2014 tells us that more than 1.45 billion people eke out a living on less than $1.25 a day. Page 8. We have so many pages. Are you so excited for this journey? This journey is going to be fantastic. Clearly, it's cathartic for me. All right. We're capturing concepts with the client. I have struggled to find the best term to identify the people with whom we work to change conditions that affect their lives. There is no one good term to describe this relationship. Some writers prefer the term consumer, but this implies a greater sense of choice than many people really have. It also implies that people are only users, not contributors. The term recipient conveys a rather passive role. Patient implies an illness. Some have suggested that the term citizen conveys a sense of dignity and equality. This is useful, although it falls short of the implication of a professional relationship, and others have questioned whether non-citizens would consider themselves included. Though partner is often a good term, it is so broad that it doesn't recognize any particular sort of partnership. Client is the most common, and it is likely that it is the designation with which you are most familiar, although it comes as close as any to connoting a relationship characterized by respect and professionalism. It may unintentionally convey notions of dependency rather than partnership. I use this term only when describing a relationship or circumstance in which the use of client reveals a particular meaning. Throughout this text, I more commonly use community member or participant to refer to those with whom you have a professional helping relationship, including those with whom you will be working to promote community change. If you're working with an organization of any size, you can go through strategic planning. Macro level social workers can complete strategic planning. And many of the processes that we would use are processes you are going to use in this class. So if you're working with an organization, ask about their most recent strategic plan because it will have items broken down. And when I've been a part of strategic planning processes, what we look at first is our mission statement. And the mission statement should include language about what do you call your client? And there should be a lot of surveying going on to say, what do your patients, your clients, your friends, your colleagues, your participants, what do they want to be called? So the organization that I have been on the board with, most fully participated with, would be the Metanoia Project, which is a cold weather shelter that does street outreach to people who live outdoors no matter what. Their trauma is so high, they just cannot live at a shelter. So the Metanoia Projects is a hospitality program that outreaches to guests. And throughout the language, throughout our handbooks, throughout our policies, at our team meetings, that is what we call the individuals who we serve. And it's a religious service organization. So they serve guests in a hospitality center, not clients at a homeless shelter. And it makes a really big deal. It makes a really big deal, a really big difference to those guests who chose that language. And that's why we use it. What a great reason. Okay, page 8, the bottom. Maybe the state will authorize only a few days of treatment for a young client of yours who needs much more than that to cope with years of being the victim of molestation. You might wonder how the administrators of the school district you work for can go jetting from this conference to the next, yet deny the use of a school bus for fifth graders to go on an educational outing because of a lack of funding for travel. How frustrated will you be when you realize that the young man sitting across from you, disheveled and insolent, has had 4 different doctors in this year directing his treatment, and that his case is not a whole lot different than others you have seen this week? Continued patterns of violence bring women to emergency room, and the response is maybe some counseling. Perhaps in your community, neighbors are disconnected from each other, disillusioned, and shrink in fear behind locked doors. You watch community members rich in insight and skill being ignored, while professional colleagues busy themselves creating yet another service program. I just, these are actual situations workers face. Other problems are less sweeping or poignant. You will see some evidence of them almost daily as you work in human services. Taken together, they imply that the people you work with have little dignity. Clients have to wait too long for an appointment, wait too long to be seen on the same day of their appointment, and have too little time with you or other professionals when they are finally seen. All they are given are appointments. Rarely are they given the opportunity to come together in an organized way to change the conditions that seem to call for all these appointments. But they are given forms, lots of forms, often lengthy and confusing. Some agency staff are insensitive, unhelpful, or downright rude. Will you grow to accept a system that employs denial and defensiveness as primary responses? Will you care if workers and agencies are isolated from the day-to-day lives of the people they are supposed to assist? Will you too ignore those who are chronically unrecognized and unreached? Will you tolerate mediocrity as the standard of your profession and keep silent about a service system that lives in fear of being found out? Many of us don't like to be confronted with these questions. We get fidgety and hope they just go away, but they don't. Can't somebody else just do something? These challenges are yours. These are situations you will face. Oh, great, you might be thinking. Here I am planning to make the lives of individuals or families happier and more fulfilling, and now I'm expected to save the whole world. Relax. Unless your presence here on Earth is some fantastic historical event, you are not going to save the world, though some of you may well have a pretty significant impact on it. Many of you are not going to work for community change as your primary professional role. Many of you will be case managers, therapists, or generalist human services practitioners. But all of you will be confronted from time to time with the challenge to promote change. All of you will face barriers to your practice. All of you will have your professional ethics tested. All of you. Will you respond or look away? Beyond a consideration of problems. An honest reflection on the many national, community, and personal problems that exist may be intimidating, even discouraging. You may look at our provision of human services in the face of so many difficulties and conclude that people just don't care about each other. Plain and simple, we, including you, just don't care. That could be, but frankly, I don't think so. Take another look. People are burdened by their fears, held back by their prejudices, and confused by their myths. This is undeniable. These factors exist, and they play a part in shaping what is available to enhance the quality of life. But just as these limitations are facts of life, so too is the genuine concern we feel for those in distress. People are moved by suffering, emboldened in the face of injustice, and strengthened by their desire to contribute. People are touched by the recognition of their common humanity. If you believe people have an interest in and the capacity for good, you will act to capitalize on that. If you don't, you will be quickly burned out in your cynicism. Surely your belief in good will be tested, sometimes to the point where you fail to see It's signs right around you, but you will pass these tests. You will find strength and energy when you convert the power of caring and common decency into an active force to counter those influences that flaw the system in which you work as a professional. You will also find examples of effective practice in your community and tremendous wealth beyond dollars that you can use to change conditions that you find unacceptable. Thousands of public school students are suspended each day, but millions are not. Every day, many families do not have enough to eat, but many more are well fed. Ignoring or rationalizing pain and suffering will callous our souls and bring threats even closer. Recognizing these conditions can spur us to action, and realizing that we can learn by looking at what is working well can give us confidence and direction. You care enough to think about your own involvement in human services. Don't you think it highly unlikely that you are the only one who feels this way? Okay, that was lovely. Can you really do anything to make a difference? Perhaps a better question is this: can you do anything about any of the challenges you encounter? You will have to leave many matters for other people, but you can tackle a fair share of your own quite well. Some thought, some planning, some common sense, some interest, a sense of purpose, some power, and a touch of luck are the basic ingredients. You can do quite a lot with just these. Add some understanding of human behavior, some recognition of resources available to you, some skill in determining tactics, and some creativity, and you have a potent combination that will definitely produce results. All these components are available to any human services worker. You can provide significant leadership in bringing people together to make needed changes, although you may not be the only leader or even the most important one. You can make a difference in your community even if you have other primary professional responsibilities, especially as you develop the leadership of others. But remember this fundamental principle: any problem that involves more than one person requires the involvement of more people than just you to resolve it. In other words, don't try to do everything by yourself. I often use the word you, but generally I mean not only you as an individual, but those with whom you are working as well. Community problems, like personal problems, provide opportunities for growth or decline. Persistent patterns of denial or withdrawal harm the community or service agency just as they harm the individual. Half-hearted or poorly managed attempts at solving problems and building capacity can prove discouraging. However purposeful, organized efforts, even less than perfect ones, yield results that can improve present conditions and set the stage for creating new opportunities and effectively meeting future challenges. Recognizing and confronting problems and looking to what you already have that you can use creates the possibility that things will be different, most likely better. When problems are accepted as permanent, these opportunities for change are missed. Capturing concepts. Page 10. Community, community problems, community change, and community development. Throughout this book, you will be encouraged to consider concerns that affect a community of people and that can be addressed through the actions of a community of people working together. But what exactly is a community? For our purposes, community consists of a number of people with something in common that connects them in some way and that distinguishes them from others. This common connection could be a place where they live, a city or a neighborhood. It may be an activity like a job, or perhaps their ethnic identification provides the connection. When I use the word community, I do not presuppose any particular size or number of people. Some communities are fully developed, recognizing certain common interests and working to provide mutual benefits. Members of other communities may barely even notice any common bond or characteristic among themselves. Communities are usually made up of sets of smaller communities. For example, cities have different neighborhoods, universities have different colleges and departments, softball leagues have different teams, and so on. When I refer to your community, I mean any of those sets of people with whom you are connected in some way and whose interests or actions are important enough for you to be concerned about. Communities have ongoing needs that require attention. These needs are quite different from symptoms or conditions of weakness or what some might label as needy. These needs can include things such as the health of members, economic vitality, or effective policy making. Communities also have extensive assets to meet those needs and to flourish in the process. Some of these assets will be recognized and well applied, others will be undiscovered, undervalued, and unused. When these needs are not adequately met and discomfort to members results, community problems exist. If things stay the same, the problems and the discomfort will persist. The word problem has been used in many ways. Some use it to convey neediness, a seemingly intractable condition, or even a temporary irritant. I use the term here simply to mean a condition that blocks human and community development. You can view a problem as an invitation to change or action. Seeing the problem as the distance between where you are and where you want to be. It is a state of tension that recognizes both current unwanted conditions and better future conditions. The only way to noticeably build strength or to get rid of the problems or to reduce them is for people to do things differently. This means community change must occur. Community change also occurs through community development, when members recognize their assets and discover how to use them in more proactive ways. Because communities function as systems, community change can be seen as system change. Community change is the process of producing modification or innovation in attitudes, policies, or practices in the community for the purpose of reducing or eliminating problems, providing for the general improvement in the way needs are met, or developing assets for the benefit of its members. This process builds skills for future uses and enhances the quality of life of individual members and the relationships among members. Community change means community improvement. These terms can be used interchangeably. In Chapter 5, you will learn more about communities. So this has been our extra super special part 2 of Chapter 1 of Homan Promoting Community Change, read by Professor Patti. If you want to hear more, just enroll in your master's program. It's the last class you take before you graduate. Don't you want to see my smiling face and just pay for a university degree while you're doing it? Some of you are. So if you're in my course, I look forward to working with you to define your communities and think about how these terms and concepts can be applied to the community of practice you're working to target for your professional career post-grad school. Have a lovely day. Thanks from Patti from Wellness Cleveland.